You can't blame me. All I did was jump out of the window. OK, so it was the big window at the vet's surgery. Mrs. Vet Person shouldn't have left it open, should she? And anyhow, what would you do if a vet came at you with a whopping great big needle? Hi there, my name is Jeremy Strong. I write loads and loads of children's books, and I'm very pleased to be taking part in World Book Day 2014, and I hope you're very pleased to be taking part in it too. I guess the best thing about being a writer is the freedom that you get with it, and that's really what I discovered at primary school when I was writing stories there. People quite often ask, you know, why did you start to write stories in the first place? Was there any particular moment? And there was in the sense that when I was at primary school, we had a lovely teacher who got us to write stories, and she said nice things about some of the stories I wrote, so that would make me want to write more stories. So she'd say even nicer things. She never said anything nice about my maths or any other subjects, because I was pretty hopeless at everything else. But I did like stories, and it was while I was in her class, I guess, I realized that when you're writing a story, there's not much that can be right or wrong about it. You know, when you're doing maths, you're either right or you're wrong. I was usually wrong. But when it came to writing stories, there isn't very much right or wrong about the story itself. You can get your spellings wrong and so on, but in a way, that's not so important to the actual story that you're telling, is it? So I loved going into that daydream world where nobody knew what you were thinking, nobody knew what you were going to write. It's your own story. It is only coming from your imagination. And that's one of the things that I like to tell children when I go into schools to talk to them, that you know they are doing something very special, and it's only coming from them, nowhere else, not from their mum or their dad or their teacher or anybody else. It's coming entirely from their imagination, their brain. I think that's absolutely brilliant. What would you do if a vet came at you with a whopping great big needle? Just a tiny jab, Mrs. Vet Person said. Oh yes, I saw the evil grin on her face, and I saw the size of the pointy needle. Big, it looked like the Eiffel Tower. I was off like a streak of lightning. No, actually, I was off like a streaker, because that is my name, Streaker, and I am the speediest speedster in the world of dog speed. I think the most important piece of advice you can give to any child who wants to do almost anything is don't give up trying. And that applies particularly to publishing, which is difficult to get into, as anyone who's ever written a book and tried to get it published will know. And my own story is that I wrote for about 5 years, sending material off and getting it rejected all the time. But eventually a book got published, and then they wanted another and another, and so it went on. So I was lucky. So don't give up is the most important thing. The moment you give up, you have no chance of success. And the other two more literary bits of tips that I could give, I guess, are quite simple really. Get your story off to a cracking start, something that's going to hook the reader almost from the first page, so that they're not likely to put the book down because they're getting bored with it. For the same reason, keep putting in little surprises in the story, because that also keeps the reader interested. You know, when a book becomes boring, it's quite often because you know what's going to happen, and you're reading it and you're thinking, well, I knew that was going to happen, I knew that was going to happen, and you get fed up with it. But if you keep putting in little surprises, then that helps keep the reader interested. Because when you're writing a story, of course, you have to remember that you're not just writing it for yourself, you're writing it for an audience, and your audience don't want to get fed up with it. Cliffhangers, of course, are always very, very useful, especially at the end of chapters, so which is the right place for them, really. That's why they're cliffhangers. So employ those. I've written so many books, it's sometimes difficult to recall all the different characters that I've put in them, but yes, there are most definitely certain ones that come to mind, in particular Streaker from the 100 Mile an Hour Dog. Oh really? My own good? I don't think so. I said I'd like to see you get vaccinated with the Eiffel Tower. Of course, he didn't understand a word I said. Humans are hopeless. What's the point in having a dog as a pet if you can't understand what it tells you? I guess that being based on a real dog, she already came with certain characteristics. In particular, she was always very lovable, but extremely badly behaved the whole time. Didn't know what her name was, didn't know what any orders meant whatsoever. She wouldn't obey any commands. So that meant that she was a great character to write about. And in particular, I discovered when writing the 100 Mile an Hour stories that most of them are narrated by Streaker's owner Trevor, but there are 2 books now which have been narrated by Streaker herself, and they, apart from the first book I wrote about Streaker, they are the ones that I had most fun writing, especially the most recent one, which is called Kidnapped, the 100 Mile an Hour Dog's Sizzling Summer. I had a long chat with Eric the cat about it after I'd got home. Of course, Eric said to me as he lay across half the sofa the way cats do, you do realise that you won't be going on holiday with them. What holiday? What do you mean? If you ever paid any attention to the 2 legs, instead of living in a dream world made of sausages and pies, you would know that they are going on holiday in a few weeks to France. France? What's that? It's another country, sighed Eric. Sometimes I wonder about your education. Don't you know anything? I know lots and lots, I told him, but I don't know about France. Can you eat it? No, it won't fit in your mouth, Eric smiled. I think it was meant to be a joke, but only he understood it. I was still in mystery land. It's another country on the other side of the sea. 2 legs go there for holidays. Sometimes they take their pets with them. Your pal Trevor wants to take you, but they won't let you into France unless you have your vaccination. I looked at Eric. My legs were going wobbly. You mean that thing like the Eiffel Tower? Oh, do stop being such a drama queen, sighed Eric. It's just a tiny jab. That's what the vet said, I muttered. Do you want to go to France on holiday or not? Is France nice? Do they have dogs there? Cat groaned loudly. There are dogs everywhere, numbskull. Even on the moon? I asked wide-eyed. Only you would ask a question like that, sighed Cat. Of course there aren't any dogs on the moon. Ah, but you said they were everywhere. So, numbskull yourself. Ha ha. I'd caught Eric out all right, pretending he was so clever. That Moggy didn't know much at all. I knew there were no dogs on the moon. I was just checking. Anyhow, that conversation made me think. The 2 legs were going on holiday and wanted to take me with them, but I couldn't go unless... Ah! The Eiffel Tower!